I got started actually in college with an internship. It was a long time ago. Things were very different. George Bush was president, and we just fought an unnecessary war with Iraq. I'm going to say a few things about the book. I'd like to keep it fairly short so we can have more of a conversation. But this is the book. It's a book cover. You see, I have a actual, I think, interesting story about the book cover. So you see here, you've got the presidential seal, and it's floating up there like you know, pagan sundial, and you've got these people down below worshiping it. Well, on the back of the book, the back of the cover, you have blurbs, and after you've done the cover, you've got the mock-up. You solicit blurbs from people, and so one of the people I thought would be good to solicit a blurb from was John Dean, the former Watergate figure who's since become a trenchant critic of executive power. And so I sent him the book and asked him for a blurb, and he emailed me and he said, you know, I saw your book cover and I have to laugh because don't you know that cover is illegal? He said Nixon issued an executive order that says you can't use the presidential seal without the official permission of the Justice Department. And I looked it up, and it turned out, yeah, you can get 6 months in prison for this. And this is the first book I've ever actually written, but I edited a collection of essays about overcriminalization in 2004. It was called Go Directly to Jail. And so I started thinking about that moment when the cell door slams behind you, and you know, your heavily muscled, heavily tattooed cellmate looks up and says, "What are you in for, kid?" And I have to say, "Unauthorized use of the presidential seal." So that could be kind of rough. Although actually, at this point, I've told that story, but what I'm really disappointed about is that they didn't prosecute me, because I would have sold a lot more books. So I add that to the many disappointments that the Bush administration has given me. Well, the book is called The Cult of the Presidency, but I've thought and joked sometimes that it ought to be called The Futility of Hope. I hope you're not here for a dose of sunny optimism about the state of the presidency and the future of our politics, because if you are, you're going to be disappointed. If you think about the phrase, the audacity of hope, and you think about what it means, I didn't read the book, but I saw the speech at the 2004 Democratic National Convention that made Barack Obama famous, and it becomes clear that the audacity of hope, it signifies the promise of redemption through presidential politics. It's the idea, right, that whatever ails us, whether it's hurricanes, divisiveness, spiritual malaise, unemployment, the president has the cure. As Barack Obama put in a speech in South Carolina at the end of 2007, with the right kind of leadership, we can, quote, create a kingdom right here on earth. Now, I hope that doesn't sound partisan, because the book is completely nonpartisan. It's relentlessly cynical about both sides of the political spectrum. And George W. Bush and McCain come in for just as much grief as anybody else. Lately, you know, that there's this phrase, the cult of Obama, that's big on the right now. In fact, there's one of the Swift Boat guys has written a book, I think the best-selling anti-Obama book. It's called Obama Nation, Leftist Politics and the Cult of Personality. And now it's certainly true that there is a cult of personality and a cult that's grown up around Barack Obama. But it makes me a little uncomfortable sometimes that conservatives are recognizing this, and they're talking about this as if it's something that's just endemic to the left. That only the left has ever embraced a cult of personality. If you used to think this, you would have to forget the last 8 years. And you would have to forget what happened after 9/11. There are, and I go through some of these in the book. There was a cult of personality built around George W. Bush that was quite astounding. You had Peggy Noonan talking about one of the speeches George W. Bush gave shortly after 9/11, where she was saying it was a God-touched moment and a God-touched speech, and this is why he was put in office, because something big and bad and terrible was going to happen, and he was the man to do it. You had Fred Barnes talking about how that Bush had been put on Earth at this point to be God's agent of wrath. That's a quote. You had the National Review Online running pieces about the action figures. Remember the mission accomplished action figure that came out about how terrific this action figure was. And you had G. Gordon Liddy, John McCain's friend, on Hardball with Chris Matthews, describing what he saw as the bulge in George W. Bush's crotch in the flight suit and how manly he was. So don't tell me that a cult of personality and a cult of the presidency is something that only happens on the left. I think we have to recognize that this happens on both sides of the political aisle. But and the fact is that both major candidates in this race subscribe to a messianic view of the presidency. John McCain worships Teddy Roosevelt. In fact, his childhood hero, according to his son, in a report in the New York Times, was Napoleon, which is when I was a kid, it was Aquaman, but it takes all kinds. But if you listen to the way the candidates talk about the office on both sides of the aisle, Mike Huckabee announced his presidential campaign by saying the reason he was running was that we need a revival of the national soul, and that he could provide that, even though he previously been a guy who was famous mostly because he used to be really fat. If you listen to any of these guys talk about the office that they seek, you have to wonder, who do they think they are? And what sort of job do they think they're applying for? Very few Americans even think to ask these questions. When you hear Mike Huckabee and Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and John McCain talk about the office they seek, you get a remarkable vision of the president. He's America's shrink and our social worker and our national talk show host. He's your buddy and your life coach. And he's also the supreme warlord of the earth. Well, this view of the presidency couldn't be further from the framers' perspective. The framers never thought of the president as the person who could solve all of your problems, let alone save the national soul, whatever that is. They knew human nature far too well to ever think of investing that much responsibility and power in any one person. The book I've written is about how far we've traveled from the framers' modest view of the chief executive, and how the modern view of the presidency that all too many people from all walks of the political spectrum, the modern view of the presidency that they embrace virtually guarantees an unhealthy concentration of power in the executive branch. So that's going to be my subject for the next few minutes before we open it up for questions. I'm going to talk a little bit about the framers had in mind for the Constitution's chief executive officer and how vastly different that is from what we have today. Then I'll talk a little bit about one important obstacle to restoring the framers' vision for the chief executive